Buenos dias, here from the Entrepreneur Next Door podcast. Here we have Jamie MacDonald from a company of dark spirits, and here we are at North Berwick Distillery. So Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Beautiful day and beautiful scenery.
Stunning.
And beautiful smell. Now Jamie, I'm curious, how do you end up here? What's your journey to come to run a distillery in this part of the world?
So Scottish born of the Highlands. Many people think I'm Glaswegian.
Why is that?
I spent a long time in. My father was and my father and mother were both artists, art teachers, involved in art and education. My father had the opportunity to move to Glasgow. He was involved in some incredible projects, Glasgow Garden Festival, City of Culture, 99, the Lighthouse Centre for Architecture and Design, and he's an artist in his own right. My mother as well, and teacher and educator. And I think especially when you then come to Edinburgh, I think there's an assumption that you've come from Glasgow without people actually questioning or asking questions or understanding. Maybe I didn't speak about my childhood as much, but a very different way of life when you first move to one of the bigger cities. But being born and brought up in the Highlands, you're centred around, the wealth of whiskey industry, which is one thing, and maybe not so much that you understand it, but it's always present, it's omnipresent around you. And then you come to Glasgow and change of culture and habitat, and then from a very young age, as I was turning 18, while I was still at school, I started bartending, working in a famous bar in Glasgow called the Horseshoe Bar.
Okay.
And
still in existence?
Still in existence.
Okay.
I think the longest bar, and they might have lost that, it was the Guinness Book of Records at one point. And a variety of faces, people, celebrities that would be there. Ollie Reed, you'd have Ali McCoist coming in, and all your patrons, and how incredibly diverse and colourful that life was. And I never thought that was going to be my career. And then I left school and started studying engineering and product design, failing each time, year after year, and falling back into hospitality. And then we decided, a group of us, that we would leave Scotland and travel. So we travelled America, we went to Martha's Vineyard, San Francisco, LA, and then to Australia, and really became immersed in this hospitality culture.
Right.
Learning more about wines, learning more about coffee culture. And when I came back to Scotland, that seemed to progress. And started working with a few places in Glasgow, and then the Montpellier group in Edinburgh. So quite a very well-known group, well-established group, especially on the forefront of cocktails. And I just joined their team quite early on with a multi-award winning bar called Rick's Bar, which was a gin joint, so per se, with a little 10 boutique rooms. So really wonderful environment. Probably one of the preeminent bars of its time in Edinburgh. Now, hundreds of bars.
Yeah.
I think there was about 7 or 8 cocktail bars at that point in time.
When was this? How long ago?
2001.
Okay.
2001, I'm 47 now. And that was amazing, being part of an incredible team, building up awards. Rick's became not just known nationally but globally. And I stayed with the group off and on for about 7 years, thereabouts, working with different projects in between. And then I started working with brands as well. So I started working with people like Grand Marnier, which was an independent company at the time, working with the family.
What role do you have in these jobs?
Brand educator.
Okay.
So drinks creation, advocacy, brand educator, working closely with marketing and with sales, facing the brand or being the face of the brand for the UK. And then still carrying on with bars. And it came to such a point then I decided to become a consultant. So I went out on my own, started working with more brands, more bars.
How long ago did the change?
Oh, the change, so must have been about sort of late 2000s when that change came in.
Okay.
And scary as well when you decide, you know, I'm going to give up my salary and, you know, I'm going to start moving forward. But it was brilliant, you know, and it worked incredibly well for me. I worked with some amazing brands. I left Grand Marnier after 3 years, and just so happened I worked with some whiskey brands in between as well. But I started doing some work with Appleton Estate Rums, who I'd discovered while I was in Australia, and really fell in love with them. And I love this brand, and I love this product and the people. And then after a year or two of working with them on events and programs, they offered me to come on board with them as a consultant in the advocacy, education,
full-time
drinks creation. No, not full-time, part-time, while I was still working with other brands and bars. And as I went on I was then propositioned by the Montpellier Group to come back. So to come back to Rick's Bar and develop the team again and really bring it up financially. And then the opportunity came for opening a much bigger bar program and a hotel called Tiger Lily. So I jumped into that, you know, brought my team forward. I went from having 8 or 9 staff to initially having, I think it was about 100 bartenders, there or thereabouts, 3 bars. We were grossing anywhere from, you know, $250,000 to $500,000 a week, you know, rather than 55,000 a week.
Yes.
It was this very steep learning curve. It was incredible. And then I fell ill. For some reason, I got my jaw broken as well from a person in the street.
Really?
Yeah. So there was some of these things, these points in life, they hit you hard in some ways, and mind the pun. And while I was out for a period of time, you know, then started getting me thinking, what do I want? You know, what do I want more? How do I want to progress? So I opened up my own bar.
So that incident made you reflect.
Made me reflect quite a lot. You're incapacitated for a period of time, and
how long were you off?
I was off for 3 months each time, kind of 3 months. You know, so you're away from everything you do, everything you love, a lot of thought process going on. And then I decided the time was right for me to develop something for myself, not just a consultancy, but a bar. So I went out, you know, my life savings, helped with my family, and we found this little bar, kind of little saloon, spitting sawdust, they might say, we called it the Rack on Tour.
In Edinburgh?
In Edinburgh.
How long? What year was this?
2009 is when we opened.
Okay, so just after the great crunch.
Yeah, so I think it was late 2008, early 2009, first start of 2009, carried on the process of, you know, turning it around, moving it forward, all licenses.
Self-funded? No loan?
No, self-funded completely. I had my business partner and friend, Teddy Joseph, who was along with me in the partnership. A couple of we built the team up slowly and gradually. Some of the staff that had worked with us for a very long time, young bartenders, and we created this sort of saloon, kind of speakeasy. And it was hidden away, and it was the opposite end. I'm so used to the bright lights of George Street and Princess Street, and the volume of people, and we did this in Stockbridge. Now Stockbridge now is, and it always was affluent, but it wasn't as busy.
Yeah.
There was your typical pubs that were there, and then there was this bar hidden away with bartenders, rolled up sleeves, aprons, wearing ties, very speakeasy like, creating cocktails, because we're a cocktail led bar, but with beers and beautiful wine selection, toasties, Spanish hams,
well done.
amazing, fresh made popcorn, an incredible ice program.
So you were very popular?
Incredibly popular. I mean, award winning, globally recognised. The opening night, in fact, we had at either end of the bar, we had two of the leading sort of hospitality personalities who'd come in and they were there. And it was incredible, over the years that we ran it. Sadly, we opened up in the height of the recession, 2009, as it was kicking in. And I remember the conversation with my accountant 3 years later, and she said to me, "You're just not charging enough." And maybe we were ahead of our time at that point. Maybe its position, given that Stockbridge wasn't what it is now. And we would have been having to charge maybe an extra 60%, 50, 60%. And we just didn't see that viable. We didn't have great landlords either. So we decided to shut, and we relocated.
How long was the venture for?
3 years. So, 3 years, 2012, 2013. So by 2013 we closed. And we found another venue, but sadly it wasn't to be. I think there was a lot, you learn a lot of mistakes were made as well. We parted company, and Terry went off to do his own thing, and he moved into London. And I was still working with Appleton's, and at that point I think they saw an opportunity as well. Let's move you to London. I'd never really been fond of going to London, but I thought, you know what, let's take an opportunity. I'd lost my relationship, the bar, we decided to close that down. Why not a change of scenery?
Yes.
A new challenge. At the same time, Appleton's were being bought over by Campari Gruppo. So a change in effect and with company. And I knew ultimately, being a consultant, that I might be one of the first people to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some amazing time. I worked with Joy Spence and David Morrison, the Master Blenders, the people that were involved in Appleton's as well. And they certainly shaped me into rum and who I am today. And there was discussions about doing a blend together, which was very exciting. But then obviously with the change of Campari. But the last project I got to work with was launching a 50-year-old rum, a reserve rum, that we decided...
So this is when you moved into the rum?
I'd already been involved in rum for quite a long time by this point.
So when you said they help you shape you the way you are today, what things happened there?
So for example, we would go to Jamaica, and we would visit the distillery and meet Joy, and Joy would come to London as well, and she would do tours, and we'd always be present. Now, if Joy and David didn't want to do something, or they weren't available, then I might be called on to step in, to educate, to present, to carry the face of the company and the narrative, and showcase the brand. And but to put it into perspective, when I was over in Jamaica, and plucky young guy, and love what I'm doing, and we love this product, and you have these incredible master blenders. I mean, Joy is one of I think, one of the only female master blenders in the world, especially in rum. There are a lot of females, especially in the Scotch whisky industry, that don't maybe get the attention I think they deserve. And Joy is an incredible person, and so is the team. And I remember the first year when we were there, and we always did, there was always a blending session done with everyone. So lots of different distillates, column still, pot still, aged, unaged. And Joy is unique in her approach to rum, but her genetics as well. Wow. What she can detect and analyse with blends, flavour, aroma. And I remember we did the session, and I felt quite chuffed with myself, and gave the blend to Joy, and she was like, yeah, not so great. And I thought, I wasn't impressed with myself. It was fun. It was really fun. But from that point onward, I thought I've got to listen more. I've got to understand more. And so I never really, I involved myself in the sessions, but I took upon myself to just, whenever I was around Joy and David, to listen more and really take everything in, soak it up. And I remember I think it was the last time I was in Jamaica with clients, and we did a blending session. And I sat there, and I remember Joy watching me, and they always gave a gift out, a prize and so on. And at the end of it, Joy announced that my blend had won.
Wow. And
she gave me a prize. And she actually said to me, I see you've been listening, learning, and developing. And I said, yes. And we laughed about it.
Brilliant.
And I love their company. I love when I see Joy. It's a brand that will always be a part of who I am. A brand that I enjoy and I respect immensely. But I also have a love of so many other rums. And I have a love of whiskey too. It's just I never could drink whiskey when I was younger. And rum and bourbon or something that I really fell in love with, and I found it approachable.
Have you watched the movie The Angel Share?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very good movie.
Yes.
And it pulls on your heartstrings a little bit, which is good. And then from that, so I've always had this love of rum. Fascinating history. I was never academic. I was never very academic as in my schooling. And going from course to course, studying engineering for 3 years, product design, it went on and on. I think through my love of alcohol and spirit and cocktails and the art of hospitality in bars, I've always found bars comforting. I could walk into any bar, I could walk into a K bar and feel at home. And know that I could strike up a conversation with a bartender, or meet an interesting person, strike up a conversation, or be there on my own, but still feel at home. And I think from all of that, I then found this love of research, history, how historical rum was. Not just rum though, other elements of bartending and spirits and hospitality. I found myself, enjoying researching, looking into documents, how best to research, what approach can I find, how then do I develop that? And I got to do some amazing things through my time. I got to work with incredible people on some amazing projects, writing, the history of Appleton's, rum in the Caribbean, and it was amazing. And then after Appleton, sadly, everything comes to an end at some point. And Campari were asking me, why are you leaving?
So you decided to leave?
Well, I didn't. It was my choice.
It was?
I had no choice.
Okay.
So the choice was made for me because I was a consultant. There was a new approach, there was a restructuring going on. And that was simply it. There was nothing there. I still keep in touch with these colleagues and love them dearly. And then I was working, I always have worked with other spirit companies, doing things with Absolute, for example, working with whiskey companies, some other private clients, blending for private clients. And then the opportunity came and I started working with Martini, Bacardi Martini. So, and I love vermouth and I love wines. So we did some very interesting projects with Martini for a year, and Bacardi then asked me to become part of a team, a new team that had been formed, a Northern European team with 10 countries, all based on advocacy, education, but working with the 5 people that were involved on different brands and scopes. And I was working in the whiskey division. And then my father passed away, and I think that really struck a chord. And at that point, it was that kind of moment where you take stock in life, you're reflecting again. It was time to start my own run. And eventually there was 4 of us involved in the beginning. Things didn't work out. 2 of us went one way, the other 2 went another way. And we decided to carry this on, which was blended rum at that point in time, which is still a part of our company. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately I had a brain tumour. So
what year is this now?
Goodness me, this is now 2017.
Okay.
So I knew there was problems, flying constantly, and sometimes I'd be going through a flight in such excruciating pain. And the last flight I had, I think I was flying back from Sweden, and I actually said to the person sitting next to me, "Can you hear that?
Can you feel that?
Can you hear it?"
I hear it. Okay.
Because all I heard was, I've got tinnitus.
Okay.
But it was like a trumpet. It was like an alarm.
Wow.
And obviously, I think these are alarm bells as well. And I struck up the courage. I said to this person, "Can you hear that?" And they said no. But they asked me, "Are you okay?" And in that moment of just feeling, I think, completely lost, but vulnerable, I opened up and I said, "No, I'm not okay." And they said to me, "I think you should go to hospital when you get off the plane." I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." And I did. So I took myself to hospital.
That was before taking off, or what?
This was while we were flying,
Okay.
and then landing.
Yeah.
And luckily I had a surgeon that was there on call who said there was something wrong, seriously. So we went through tests, and it took time, and I'd obviously been there for a period of time as well. So it was the 7th rarest of its type. It was about the size of a golf ball.
Wow.
And age as well was a factor. But then they start speaking to you about life and death. And it's very humbling, and this then took a few years to actually get towards the operation. So I didn't have the operation until January 2019. So 2 years from the time of actually knowing. And I was very close to losing my life.
And at that time, the trumpet was still there?
Yeah. And I still have tinnitus. It's there, it's ever present in my life. And from that though, I kept working as much as I possibly could up until the point that I could not any longer. And we were really pushing forward with the run in the company. And then I had to take, they told me 3 months recovery. 3 months, but it could be longer. So 3 months turned into...
Post-operation.
Post-operation, yeah. The operation was a success. It could be much, much worse. And the tumour is still there, the disease. And then it could be 3 months, but it could be however long it takes. So it took about 8 months for recovery. very different. You get your taste buds back again. It's like a rebirth, and it might sound cheesy, but it's like a rebirth in some ways. You're eating strawberries again that you haven't been able to taste.
You start from scratch.
For months. Your balance, walking, and you've got to be careful and protective. And you really start to change your focus on life as well. And obviously you have a lot of time to yourself. 8 months.
Another period of reflection.
A lot of time in bed, not doing anything. You're not allowed to watch prolonged periods of TV. You can't drive. You're not allowed to read. You can't climb up. My flat was 2 flights of stairs, but you're not supposed to climb more than 3 or 4 steps. You're not allowed to be on ladders.
Sense of balance. Yeah.
Sense of balance, care, because of the nerves and where they were. So yeah, that was an interesting time in life. And as we came out of that, and I started getting myself back together again, and working with friends.
So the business was still going.
The business, we were just starting. It was really just starting. We'd had to regroup after what had happened with the 4 people. We had to re-strategize, take that forward. That got to a stage we had to stop. And when I came out of recovery, let's start moving forward again. Obviously carefully, working with other companies and clients. And I hadn't been working for years. Managing my assets, selling assets to keep yourself going. I'd left my company prior to knowing about the disease, so I didn't have health insurance. There was all sorts, and this is the fight that you put in yourself to keep yourself moving forward. Mm-hmm. And then recovery was September, and only a few months after that, COVID.
Correct.
And you go into COVID. And you think to yourself, you're prepared for COVID, and because you've just been through this long period of recovery. And at first it was okay, it was a great summer, and then I got the phone call about Hospital Live, and these things kind of kept you busy, but financially you're not bringing money in. You're doing everything you can to just to stay alive, stay positive. And eventually it affected my mental health, anxiety, depression, probably not COVID, but pre-COVID and pre-operation, the loss of my father, and all of these things affected me. But you had a lot of time in your hands to plan, to strategize. We came out of COVID, we tried to get the business moving during COVID. Not going to happen. Everyone else was concerned with what they had to do. Production facilities had shut down.
Now, do you mean alcohol consumption?
Alcohol consumption went up considerably. Yeah. Around my area in the west end of Glasgow, there were numerous parties going on, many a night.
And number 10 in London as well, numerous parties.
And touche. And there was, and you spoke to people. I remember doing 2 tastings. So the World Whisky Awards, I was a judge. We're all on camera, and was one. And I remember doing some tasting, and this was starting at like 9 a.m. in the morning, and by midday, I need to get out. I need to have some fresh air. I need to eat some. And again, when you were doing tastings, and I thought, no, I can't keep doing that. That's just me personally. Mm-hmm. And others, were, I think one of the expressions was, is it rosé o'clock? That could be 8:30 in the morning, 9 in the morning, 12, 1. People did what they had to, for such an exceptional change in life and circumstances, right or wrong, and consumption of alcohol just went through the roof, which was incredible. You know, there were some amazing things as well, what you could get your hands on, trying things, sampling, brilliant. And we came out of that, thankfully, and regrouped, you know, re-strategized. We'd spoken to a few distillers about working with them, collaborating. And in that time, you know, I realised, you know, I really need to start focusing on myself a little bit, mental health. And then a conversation came about regarding North Berwick Distillery, or NB Distillery. And they had rum stills. You know, they were gin producers, but they had rum stills. They were making rum, but they'd stopped making rum. We didn't know why. But the stills were very unique. They come from a company called John Doerr and Co. And John Doerr is one of Britain's oldest still manufacturers. And there was another company called Coffey and Sons, who created what was called the Coffey still, which is a traditional column rather than a pot. Mm-hmm. And John Doerr and Co had bought Coffey and Sons. So they'd amalgamated the two businesses, two different designs. The Coffey stills, or column stills and rectification stills, were very good for spirit production, gin production. And the John Doerr stills were uniquely known for, probably around the whisky industry as well, you know, but they also create these stills, single retorts or double retorts. And essentially it acts like a triple distillation. And we knew this company at the time had one. That's what they bought, designed, built by John Doerr and Co. prior to John Doerr shutting its books off. So it's one of the last stills that was designed, built, manufactured by John Doerr and Co. And it's manual, and it's completely inefficient, but it's beautiful. It's like a diamond. Yeah. You require the flaws in that diamond for it to be this beautiful piece of art, in a sense, this luxury. And it's what creates that diamond, you know. And I think that's what creates humans as well. There's flaws in every one of us, you know. We're not perfect. And a lot of these old types of stills, those imperfections are the beauty in what can be produced in those stills. They are laborious and they're manual. And we started entering into discussions with the previous owners about coming on board. So we contracted them as a company, and in turn they contracted me to come in. So we contracted them to make rum for us, but they weren't going to make rum because they knew how to make rum, but they weren't doing it in the way that it should be done, with the equipment, with the process. So they consulted me to come in, so we would make rum. We would make rum for them, we would make rum for us, under their production unit.
What were they making before then?
I mean, you could call it rum. Okay. So rum is a byproduct of sugarcane, as you know. And you generally make rum from sugarcane juice. So the pressing of sugarcane, it's a juice. You then make a syrup. So it's a sort of centrifuging of the juice, a clarification, and you make a thick syrup that you can ferment. Or you start to produce molasses. You know, is it the first pressing or centrifuging, third, fourth, blah, blah, blah. So America only has really grades of molasses. It's not so defined in the UK, but to do with bricks and your ash composition and so on. And then there are other countries, you know, Japan makes rum from brown sugars. Now we don't look at that as rum, generally. In the Caribbean it's sugarcane, juice, syrup or molasses. We look at it the same in for most of us, we look at it the same here. There are people experimenting. But generally that's the legal definition of rum.
Okay.
And you have to be respectful to other countries, but overall that is what you make rum out of. I'm sure there might be some people making some whiskey out of potatoes somewhere, but generally you're going to make whiskey out of grains and cereals. So you're not going to do something different. I mean, people do say, you know, you ever tried making rum out of sugar beet? Well, that's not rum. That's something completely different.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be a sugar beet spirit or something like that.
So you approached them and suggested to produce.
Yeah. So we started making. So they were making rum. I would probably say they were making like a moonshine, and I love moonshiners. I think what they do is incredible. I love watching them, educating myself from what they do, understanding what moonshiners do, production wise, and also they have a lot of fun. You know, you see a lot of programs these days. So they weren't using molasses, they were using treacle, and they were using golden syrup. Now that's not realistically wrong. And they were using yeasts that were just what we call turbo yeasts. So a high conversion, a quick conversion of alcohol. All of that is not going to produce flavour.
Yeah.
It'll produce a flavour, but it's not going to produce a spectrum of flavours.
At this point, you had developed, you were good at tasting and
Yeah.
developing.
Yeah, and I've been developing rums for other companies, private clients, footballers. I was on tasting panels for so many things. I love flavour. You know, it's something I was going to say it's something you brought up in the Highlands, but I don't think it matters where you are. You know, you enjoy what's around about you. You know, the landscape, nature, fruits. You know, I grew up, you know, berry picking and, you know, running through hedgerows and, you know, Cape of Glasgow. And then it's a very different environment, but, you know, it's a very similar environment. You know, I love cooking and baking. You know, I love going into, you know, perfume stores, you know, different scents, going into grocers.
You develop the senses.
Yeah, and I think that in the language of that, I'm still developing. You know, I don't maybe have the language that some people do. When you look at amazing writers, you know, you look at people like maybe Tristan Stevenson, Curious Bartender, you look at Dave Broom, you know, as a writer, incredible, you know, brilliant, amazing use of words and language. That was never my forte. But, you know, you develop yourself and you work with what you have. And so the opportunity came to working with these stills. And I'd never worked with equipment of this size and scale. You know, I'd worked with hot stills, rotary evaporators, very small alembic stills. So it was daunting. But I approached it with care and a degree of learning and understanding. All that practical work, that theory, the learning that I'd put in place, you know, and with assistance from friends as well, spending time with, you know, people like Kit Crothers at Ninefold Distillery, Ben Inglis and his team at Isla Rum Company, and really just started to slowly put that into place. And I didn't rush anything. You know, I spent months, first sort of 7-8 months, just fermentations, you know, 25 litre fermentations, 50 litres, you know, again and again and again, until such a time as happy with the fermentations, happy with the process, you know, the raw materials we have.
So you were tweaking the process.
Yeah, and then time to eventually, let's start distilling. So we began to start distilling, and I just did the same thing, you know, same consistency, you know, same product, you know, over and over again, just to make sure of the consistency. And this was the rum being made for this company, prior to us taking over. And very different in my own mind what I wanted to do, because I wanted to create a rum like a love letter to Jamaica, you know, in the style of or technically in the style of Jamaican rum.
At this point, were you already thinking launching into, basically buying this place, or?
No. We're quite happy. I think we had a great relationship with them. Financially, it was a great deal. We had no ownership. So our overheads were much lower. Working with them as they were contracted. Life was good. Life was easier. And as we were starting to build up, and then thinking about brand development, bottles, packaging, I met my now partner Zoe, who's incredible, and eventually she fell pregnant. So
you did?
So Zoe fell pregnant, and that was it was an exciting moment, scary. So just as we were ready to launch our rum, we were also ready. Zoe was ready to give birth to Atty, we had no name for him at the time, my baby boy, and launch Atty. And as we came back from this kind of soft launch we'd done with the rum, the managing director said, "I just don't want to do this any longer."
Really?
I said, "Oh, give yourself a day or so." He said, "No." And I said, "Okay." 2 days later,
This was what, 3 years ago? Or?
2 years ago.
Okay.
And he just said, "I don't want to do this."
So your boy was born, and then he told you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Ish.
just about
Okay.
that time-wise. Atty wasn't quite born yet, but it's close.
Yeah.
And the reality was, okay, so what do we do? And the options were, we'll give you 3 months, pack up, find another site, move everything around, or maybe you'd like to purchase the assets, the brand, not the company and its trading, because it was whoever they decided to want to, not for us to discuss. But the brand and the IP and the assets. You look at the brand and you think, great, it's done incredibly well for itself. It was exporting to 14 countries. It survived COVID.
What volumes were they doing at the time?
I don't know, not dissimilar to the volumes we were doing, a little bit less, the volumes we were doing now. The trading has been quite sort of, I would say, not flat, but there's not been a huge increase. It's just steady. But they were doing exceptionally well. It was a company that started off in 2013 at the height of, I think this was the start of the gin boom. And they had a lovely label, very different to what you see now, which is, I don't know, you can't think, kind of block, somewhat Art Deco, I don't really know, I don't think it knows itself. And the previous label was very minimal, and I quite like it. I think it was a time when there wasn't so much minimalism going on. And I've read some articles of people saying, it's quite blank, it's quite sparse, it's quite minimal, but it has shelf appeal. And it only took them a few years, and they won World's Best Gin. So World's Best London Dry Gin.
Wow.
In the world. Then they won Gold Masters, San Francisco Spirits, IWSC, and the medals kept coming. They decided to extend the line of gins, create a vodka, and a great vodka as well. Export now started happening for them, 14 countries, USA, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australasia, incredible. And a great gin, a great product, and a great base and facility. And then, you must keep that up, that momentum. And the two owners were lawyers. They still are lawyers. So for them, that was always going to come first. And I think by the point in time that we'd arrived, there was no brand development. They hadn't changed anything. But they were still here. They were still alive. The brand was still pushing forward. So we saw the potential with the brand.
Yeah.
Re-engage, develop, export, start really navigating the UK, using our network.
Should you decide at that point to buy the assets?
So we decided to buy the assets, and with that, all the headaches that come with a distillery, and with that, you start off and you think great, and you've got cash flow, and then the reality is you don't have approvals, so you might buy a facility, unless someone remains to be a major shareholder, then it changes hands, you change approvals, so you're back in that process again. We had duty paid stock, so we had a certain amount of stock that would allow us to keep carrying on, but not fundamentally what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And cash flow still, cash burn is happening, and you get past and you have approvals, and then you have to start thinking about the focus and the money that you have spent. That's just the cash flow's just been going, and bringing in investors, ultimately trying to push sales out. And as this is happening, you're seeing the gin market has exploded. The vodka market has already exploded. The gin market has exploded. The gin market is starting to go into double decline digits. Every brand is, a brand new bottle design and mould. It's all about the aesthetics playing a huge part. And that should be always a part of it, design. And really, when you now look at this product, the liquid is great, but it doesn't have the presence, And the thing is, you then need investment. So, we've been pushing for investment, but, the beauty of it is being able to actually produce and create some rums that are incredible, that have won some awards already. Refocusing on the gins, tweaking the recipes, but tweaking them in so much as that you're not taking away from all the people that love that gin. So we added fresh lemon as a botanical. We added wild distillery grown rosemary, because rosemary is piniferous and it's very similar to juniper in ways. So things that won't, imbalance.
Yeah.
They'll work in harmony. And the same with the rums. We're very proud of what we have done with the rums, and over that space of time. So it's been an interesting journey so far.
Brilliant. There's a wonderful, incredible story with ups and downs and times to reflect, and I always think that everything happens for a reason.
It does.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
Yes.
And now on to the next, chapters, which, brand development, more investment. We're onboarding some investors right now. We're speaking with investment groups.
So you're changing the brand.
And we have to change the brand. As we discussed before, we put the video on NB Distillery. Maybe it sounded good at that point in time, and the use of just like letters, abbreviation. But we have people that come in and say, what does it stand for?
Yeah.
North Berwick. Some people say Nota Bene. Is it something else other than Nota Bene or North Berwick? And you have to think about the provenance of what's here. You're in this beautiful area, twice voted best place to live in the UK. Stunning. You've got 14 major golf courses here. The Scottish Open is played.
Do you play golf?
I do. Yeah,
Me too.
Don't ask me my handicap.
No, same here.
Terrible.
Okay.
And I haven't played golf since I Atty
Yeah.
has been born.
Yeah.
But for me, it's switching the phone off, enjoying the walk, challenging myself as well. Because somebody used to say, golf is so relaxing. Is it?
For me, it is. I am a social player.
I'm a social player.
But people I play with, they suffer.
They suffer, right? And you know, people always say, and I laugh at some of their golf, say, "I wish I handicap," and I say, "This is what I am."
Yeah,
And they're like, "Oh wow."
Yeah.
To me, I don't care.
Correct.
You know, I'm with good people,
Same here.
good company, or I could be out in my own golf,
Yes.
and I'm just enjoying the time. I
So you're in the
it.
right place. You're in the right place.
You're in the right place, and you know, you look outside and
Yeah.
you're all the way down. This reminds me of, it's so similar to where I grew up. You know, there was not a care in the world. You know, you knew the neighbours, the fishmonger, the butcher. You know, major things were things like, oh, Princess Anne is coming, you know, to town, or the Queen or something.
Yes.
You know, crazy.
Yes.
But you grow up in this environment that, you know, it's like a bubble, essentially. And you can see that here with North Berwick. You know, when I was driving out of North Berwick last week, and you know, Jenny, who works with me, her son, it was so hot one of the days, and her son, you know, couldn't wait to get back, and then they were going down to the harbour to jump off the pier.
Yeah.
You know, it's an amazing place for children to grow up,
Yes.
or to grow up, or for adults. And for me, it's very reminiscent of where I grew up and what I see. And you've got St. Monans and Abs just down
Don't
there.
promote it too much, because what was it, this guy next year who went to Cotswolds and went into farming,
Yeah,
and then you had a lot of tourists, and he got so upset of having so many tourists coming around, you know.
and you know, this is very touristy.
Yes.
You think about the N500 in Scotland, you know, and all the things you hear about that with camper vans.
Yes.
And we were climbing, I was with a good friend a few months ago, it was his very last Monroe to climb. We
How many
climbed
Monroes? 200 and...
238,
Okay.
and everyone joined him for the climb. You couldn't get parked. No, you couldn't get parked at any. It was so difficult. You know, it was parking, everyone off road. You know, everyone's trying to fight to get the car in. It was incredible. But it also shows you just that, I think, from COVID and people not being able to travel, but discovering more about their own countries as well. So yeah, I think we have to be careful about how to do promote too much or something. But the environment lends itself to what we're trying to do here as well.
So what's your project then? What do you want to take the business to? By the way, what's the new brand then?
So we're still going to manage, so we are a company of dark spirits, but we have NB Distillery. We have to bring the provenance of the distillery forward, North Berwick, you know, rather than people saying, what is NB? And that's a production site. There are many ways that we can manoeuvre and pivot with the business. You know, would I like to go back to seeing more blends? Yes. Did I imagine I was going to be making gin and vodka? No. Respectfully, great products. You know, I've always worked with flavour. So we'll maintain that, but how do we manage those products versus the rum? So it's giving the rums their own identity. What that will be, I don't know yet. It could be rum royalty or rums of rum royalty. I want them to be fun. I want them to be, you know, elegant but informal. You know, not overly serious, but serious. And much the same with the gin. The gin is a great product. The vodka is a great product. It just needs a little bit of lift and a little bit of life and a new livery and a new, you know, it's like the king's new clothes. Something to really appeal without maybe going into, oh, let's get a bottle designed. Do we need to do that? It's how you really encapture design, colour, font, description, narrative, storytelling. That for us is the basis of who we are and what we are. And there also has to be an end user. 27% of all cocktails are rum. So we have to really focus in and dial into the cocktail experience as well, bars. But also the drinkers of rum and rum lovers, what they love, how do they drink rum, what's the approach. And so, we will have two elements of brand development. One will be the rums, and the other will be North Berwick Distillery. Gin, vodka, production, cask sales. And they will manoeuvre in the same way, they're symbiotic, but I think they deserve different identities for what we wanted to achieve. And the rum, we go back to what we did originally, which was we were blending rum. We were creating very unique blends of different flavour profile that were so unusual. And I'd really like to get back to that as well, the beauty of blending.
So how many blends do you have? How many flavours?
There's a box through those doors,
We'll have
Pandora's box. We created an arrangement of blends. We were only looking for 3 blends at the end of it. But it's like going back to the research you've done and you pick something out again and you go, oh, that was interesting.
So you keep track of every blend you produce.
And you keep track of every
every
batch that you do as well. Because we can create different styles of rum from the production that we have and the technical equipment that we have. But you also have to think about, we are craft, we're small, we're very small, but we want to be greater, we want to be back in Expo. But I've also got a young family, a very young family. Yes, I've got, great people working with me, my business partners, fractionally involved, he's here 8 hours a week or so, on different elements. So there's only so much you can give, and then there's got to be a breaking point. Investment must come in, new equipment, develop the actual business, and not in a sense of it's a cop out in many ways, but what is going to make my life easier? Just simplify things.
Yeah.
Less is more.
Correct.
Sometimes we don't always need.
Yeah, definitely.
I look at gin companies and there's nothing wrong with it, and they've got X many gins and limited editions coming in.
Yeah.
And it's great if there's a process you can work to in a certain standard, and you also have. But I also look at it in a different way, and what do we want to achieve, out of the distillery, and what do we want to achieve out of what was our first love, And I think the time recently that I've been sort of taking off and working from home, and it's made me start to realise, the things that I'm missing about the brand and what I want, and the things that we did originally to develop the brand. So, new livery, new narrative, storytelling, our story, who we are, what we are, what the brand and the products are, and the consumers, and really getting that out, and how we approach that, and how that story is told. And that's the next stage for the business.
Do you see domestic sales as opposed to exports? Where do you see the biggest growth happening?
I see both. The markets are so interesting right now. Some markets there's a fragility in them. Like you said, I think everyone, producer-wise, loved COVID to a degree. 3, 4, 5 times the volume. There's a pizza company in Glasgow that got bought over a year ago. Pisano's, I think, pre-COVID would generally make about 1,000 pizzas a day. During COVID, I think it was something like 4,000 pizzas a day. And you didn't have to do anything. The doors weren't open.
Yeah.
You know?
Many businesses were thriving during post-COVID, and they think, you know, that was going to last forever.
No.
And then...
and you come out of it and, you know, that bubble has burst. And we have to start, and we're not doing it, it's not quickly done, it's slowly progressing forward, opening channels back up again, you know. So for us, people always ask me, I always find it interesting. To me, I look at every channel, e-commerce, so direct to consumer, D2C, but we want B2B, B2C, B2D. We're looking at bulk supply in discussion this afternoon with a company looking to produce something that's quite interesting, that would be very unique to the market as well. Private cask sales for people. You know, would you be happy if you just went down one route? Yes. But you also have to be respectful about the environment too. And then on a level of growth, you know, you have to get back into retail. And that's been our biggest, you know, probably the biggest negative on the business has been the look, the feel and the appeal of the product. So you go into retailers and, you know, your product stands there versus all the other products in the market, and you're not going to get that. Shelf space is a premium.
Yeah.
You know, retailing is a premium now.
Yeah.
E-commerce is not a premium at the end of the day. The premium is how do you maneuver through e-commerce,
Yes.
you know, without obviously spending too much money on analytics and SEO, etc. And then there's export as well. You know, and companies, a lot of companies, especially in the hospitality or spirits industry, a lot of companies look at, there's so many different models that they choose. You know, we're 90% off trade, we're 10% on trade. Oh no, we're 70% on trade, we're 30% off trade. It really depends. There's no right, there's no wrong. I think the only effect or cause and effect that opened everyone's eyes up was when COVID came, that certainly put a stop to a lot of businesses for a lot of people. And they either had to pivot very quickly or just slog it out. You know, and that's the difference. And I think when we saw that, we then thought, you know what, we'd always want a production somewhere that we could produce our own, and we could do it from start to finish and control those elements.
Do you see yourself as a boutique player?
Yes, I love the word boutique, although I think it's been bastardised over the years. You know, boutique would be quite niche. Was great. Craft, I think, a bit. I don't
Artisan.
Artisan, yes. Craft, artisan. You know, working towards. We want to be seen as, you know, the benchmark for Scottish spirits. You know, and what does that mean? That's modern innovation with tradition.
I like that, the benchmark.
Yeah, but there are also so many other great producers as well.
Yes.
You know, the rum production in Scotland is slowly building, which is really good. You don't want to see an explosion like gin, because it's just a trend and it's marketing, and you can't really control those consumers. You know, the narrative is held by them. But you either go down that route and you make, you know, a unicorn flavoured gin with, you know, tears of a dandelion.
Yes.
You know, blah 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 blah. Or you want to be something, you know, a little bit more unique and a little bit more aspirational. And I think that's certainly what because we look at the rums and the companies. If I look at my peers and the people in the rum world, and I look at, you know, Foursquare Rums of Barbados, you know, and Mount Gay, and I look at Appleton Estate and Hamden Estate from Jamaica and Worthy Park, and you look at some of the old styles of rum that are maybe from lost distilleries, you know, Guadalupe rums, You're looking at Demerara runs with various heritage stills and different styles. And that to me is incredibly exciting. And even then, if we're going to approach something, like a spice run, how are we going to do it? We're going to do it by distilling. Some people use flavours, and there's nothing wrong with that either. I've worked on some amazing projects where we've created products with organic flavourings and natural flavourings, and we're adding in mouthfeel and so on. And that's innovation too, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
There's no right and there's no wrong. There is a pathway to take that will be your journey, and how you want to do that.
What are some of the main challenges you've come across in running a business?
I think certainly, personally, I think it's probably it's not having the investment. That's one thing. Walking into this, I said to my business partner, we need to build that investment in, or you're going to struggle. You're going to find it's a very slow path. You need to build that in quickly, because anything can go wrong as well. You balance out your budget and so on, and then engineering works, boiler blows, a pump. We're not talking a few £100, thousands of pounds, thousands upon thousands of pounds. The challenge to get back out to market, again, investment though. Investment's critical to that. There are many things we can do ourselves as well, but you've also got to cherry pick the things on a commercial decision that is the best for that moment in time as you work towards the future. I live in Edinburgh, so commuting will never be as bad as living in London. Never. But
when I came here, I thought I was going on holidays.
Yes.
Wow.
And I love the drive in.
Yeah.
But there are days that I'm like, oh my god. And traffic dependent as well. But I do appreciate where the distillery is based and the people round about us. Challenges is also getting support from, we work really closely with Scottish Enterprise and Scottish International Development. It's taken some time to get to that stage. We're a big part of East Lothian. Do we get a lot of support from them though? No, not really.
Could be better.
Okay, could be better. Government, but then you've also got things that are out with your control. You've got inflation, tax, duty rises. One of the biggest part. Let's be honest about this subject. You make a product, and to make a product, the cost of a bottle, to produce, might be in the region of £4, £4.70, £5. The bottle, the closures, the label, creating the liquid, diluting, packing, but then you're paying the government, £10 plus that, more depending on the ABV. So the greater part of you sell to and you sell to a business.
So challenges.
Challenges. So you've got to really work on those margins. And some, when you start to look at big volumes or you're looking at commercial contracts, those margins start to chip away. So you've always got to then think that it's not one model just fits all. That just cannot be the case. You've got different pricing from online, you've got different pricing from direct retail, you've got various companies, and even when you're dealing with various businesses, there won't be the same price available. There might be some support, they might want a decrease in price, one might want a greater GP, So there's so many different variables.
Many moving plates. Yeah.
Many moving plates.
Yeah.
Many.
So Jamie, where would you like to be, 10 years from now? Will be a great dream, Time to dream, come on.
Yeah, time to dream. I think we'd always be, we love Scotland, myself, my partner.
You look very Scottish, by the way.
I look very Scottish. Going to Amsterdam in a few weeks. Some Dutch actually speak to me in Dutch as if I'm going to talk and converse with them. But I think we'd always love to be here. But I would also love, I would love to have maybe somewhere abroad as well. One of the visions we had for this business years ago was, Scotland was known for making rum and through its dark past, and we can't move away from that. We have to just be open and honest about it. And you had sugar houses, Edinburgh and predominantly Glasgow. And rum production for, nearly the best part of a couple of centuries. But rum is, it is intrinsically the Caribbean, if you look at that. And we always wondered whether, we'd love to have something in the Caribbean, something small, artisan. But I think the real focus just has to be here, and in 10 years' time, will we have exited the business? That's one thing. I remember someone saying to me years ago, why would you want to build up your own business and exit it? What's the point? Why are you doing that? Well, that is the point. If you have a business that is incredible, that you want to keep as a legacy, and if it's performing incredibly well financially,
As a passive asset.
absolutely, right? Amazing. And as you grow the business, you'll bring the right people in to take over from you. You'll hand it over, it'll grow, there'll be more people involved.
You've done your bit.
You've done your bit. You can still be a part of the business, but stand off, or you look for an exit strategy, and there's one or the other, and how that exit strategy will be played. I mean, there's still people say some of those golden moments are gone. Brands like Grey Goose, 42 Below vodka, the purchase of Appleton Estate or J. Lane Nephew by Campari Gruppo. But then you still see it. These buyouts still happen. 62 million. Aviation Gin, overall a package worth $610 million.
Yeah.
Don Papa Rum, things like 435 million with options. It's incredible.
Correct.
So it's still happening.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, you're seeing, I'm not saying our business is fragile as well. You're seeing businesses, distilleries shut down. You're seeing the challenges of, the market, as you were asking about the UK market and export. The UK is a double-digit decline for gin, right? But you're starting to see an incline in vodka again because Gen Z and younger generations. That's not to say gin still doesn't have growth potential. It's where and how and you manage that retailing aspect. But then there is growth potential everywhere. We speak quite clearly. Hopefully we will launch the rum in America.
Mm-hmm.
We have our gin, not that we own it, but older contracts. We have our gin in 20 states across America. And we'd love to re-engage that, because gin in America is 3% of the overall spirits consumption.
Mm-hmm.
because it's still such a young category in American culture.
Yeah.
And they're also very tuned into homegrown brands, which I don't think we necessarily are.
Yeah.
Even whiskey at the best of times. And there's a snobbish element to it. But there is still growth. You know, if you speak to China, we don't rum, no. Gin, oh yeah, vodka. So, and whiskey still, obviously. And you look at other markets, it's exactly the same thing. So you really have to start thinking about planning and strategy and positioning.
Yeah.
And it's not going, whereas in the mind of maybe some of the people in the business, investors included, they might think, great, you've got this product and it's going to be able to go here and here and here and here as a portfolio.
Yeah.
No. You're going to have to cherry pick. You know, rum will work, the positioning in this country.
Yeah.
All the products will work
Yeah.
in these countries.
Yeah.
That country will only have one product and slow growth. But rum has the potential for growth for the next 20 to 25 years before it starts to plateau. And not flatline, but you want rum to grow in the same direction as whiskey. As an asset with value and wealth, and grow that wealth and grow that asset. Whereas gin is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's just you've had so many producers and people just maybe just throwing products out without be terrible, you know, what one person's project to them and passion might not suit me, but they still love what they do, and you have to be respectful in many ways. You might not like it, you know, and I certainly think at times gin just gets everything thrown at it. It reminds me of vodka back in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, and it was cream eggs and Tic Tacs and everything. Everything was thrown at it. And you don't want rum to go that way.
Yeah.
You want that growth that's going to allow rum to remain and keep growing and be loved and enjoyed respectfully in the right way.
So one of your functions is a protector of the purity of rum. Yeah,
I mean we are. There's a group of us looking at the Scottish GI for rum, and how we protect that, and you know what does that mean to Scotland, and we will have to be, you know, we're not being cautious or careful, but we want to be inclusive with other producers as well, what they do, because again there's a lot of bastardization or, you know, mistreatment of a category or an uneducated mindset, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but marketing plays so much into the minds of people, and money does as well. Money's got no boundaries, it's got no morals, you know, and it can take over what you would hope people would understand about something, and you have to then work around that narrative. And hopefully we can get rum into the right place, the right people, how it's thought of, what is rum, people understanding it more, you know, and how they want to enjoy it as well, how they appreciate it.
Brilliant. Well, just Jamie, that was very, very interesting and educational. Thank you for that. Just to finish, what have you got a book that you've read that says, wow, you know, you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some interesting books. There was a book, I'm trying to remember the title. The Setting the Table. I think it was by Danny Meyer. Have I got that right? Entrepreneur over in US, hospitality. Very, very interesting. Some books like Gordon Ramsay that I've read that were very interesting. The owner of Avery Restaurant, very inspiring. The challenges, you know, how that was perceived, how his life's journey became to where he was. But there's also books that I find very inspiring historically that I like to read. You know, that academic side of me, like I said, was never maybe apparent when I was younger. But now, you know, my partner will say to me, you know, what are you reading that for? Do you not switch off? But I am actually switching off.
In a way, yeah.
I don't get the time to sit down and enjoy and read a book and understand it, you know. And when I do, and even if it's academic, you know, I love that. I love learning a little bit more and getting to know something, more information. But it is relaxing too.
Yeah,
you know.
Brilliant. And a day in the life of who will you? It could be a living or from the past. If you could spend a day with, who would that be?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I mean, from an emotional point of view, you know, to have another day with your father. I think because at the time of his passing was, I was getting to understand him more, spending more time having more dialogue. I think people-wise, my goodness, I mean, when you look at some of the people in rum, I've always loved books based on history of cocktails and time. You know, if you could go back in time and spend a day with, there's a chap called Charles H. Baker Jr., who was an author and a writer, a storyteller, and very passionate about rum, very passionate about drinking, possibly alcoholic at that time. I think it'd be fascinating, you know, to learn more from and understand from these people. You know, you look at people like Hemingway. But the one person I would ultimately, I think, just to love to be in his company or to, you know, experience that, you know, David Attenborough, which is what I named my little boy, who I named, not what.
Interesting, yeah.
I was going to say, forget humans, I'd rather be a creature of some sort, because animals fascinate me, and I have such a love of animals. We are animals as well. But we named Atty after David Attenborough, or so we thought. And then a friend, a dear friend, Spanish friend actually from Madrid, phoned me up and said, do you realise his name means strength of a bear in Old Scots Celtic? And I said, wow. And that to us resonated, you know, wow. David Attenborough, Atty, strength of a bear. And I think I would, to be able to spend time with a person like that who is a very wonderful, magical person, and how he looks at life, I think that would be incredibly interesting and humbling as well, probably.
Brilliant. Well, Jamie, thank you very much for being part of the Entrepreneur Next Door. And we'll finish it here, but we are going to have some tasting in a minute, of your beautiful rum.